So what I'll do is I'll just create two edit text. And I'll give an int saying name, first name, and I'll give an ID to it. Then what I'll do is I'll give another edit text. So I have given second name. Finally, what I'll do is I'll give a button saying wrap content, match parent, and I'll give it as, I'll give the text saying save. So this will save the data into the shade preference. Next, what I'll do is I'll give another button. I'll read the value now. To read the value from the shade preference. So now you can see I have created two buttons and a save button. Okay, this should be wrap content and it should be wrap content. So now we have two things. Now I'll write the code to access the shade preference. I'll create it as save and I'll just give it as read. Okay, I'll give it as save, then read. Now we'll write the logic of it. So just we have created a listener to it and everything we have done for it. Now what we will do is we will write a code to read the value and save it into a shade preference file. So to read the value, first what I'll do is I'll give as first name equals, we have two edit text, so we have to declare that also. Sorry, I have not declared it. So I'll just create a reference of it. So I have created the reference of it. Now what I'll do is I'll read the value, whatever is entered in the first name. And next is what I'll do is I'll read the value that is entered in the second name. Now I have read both the values which is available in the first name and the second name. Now to save it, as I told you, we should open it in an editor mode. So we'll open it an editor. To open an editor, actually what we did is we created a shade preference object, and through the object we add a method called as edit. So that is what we have to do. So we'll use the edit method. So before that you have to create a shade preference object. So to create the shade preference object, we should use shade preferences equals new. Sorry, it is not new. It is get shade preferences. You have to pass the file name. For example, what I'll do is I'll give it as my file, and we have to pass the context of it. I'll give it as mode private. So now my shade preference file is available. Now what we can do is using the shade preference object, we will get the edit. So now it is in editor mode. I'll create an key value pair like put string. Since I am going to store a string value, I am going to use, I'll give the name as first, and I'll pass the value as first name. Now again I'll create another editor dot put string, then I'll give it as second and I'll give it as second name. Finally, we will commit by using editor dot commit. So now this is successfully saved. So there won't be any problem in it. Now the value is saved successfully. So this is to save it. Now I have to read the value from the shade preference. So to read the value, as I told, first we have to check whether the shade preference is having dot contains. We have to check the key. Key is nothing but what I mentioned is like first, if this is available, what I'll do is I'll log it. I'll show you the log, how to use a log. This is mostly useful for debugging purposes. You can use this log. It is like which is called as logger. You can use this during your debugging purpose. So I'll give it as first name and I'll read the value now. I'll read the value like shade preferences dot get string. We have to pass the key name. And suppose if the key name is not having any value, you can give your own value. Like for example, instead of the value whatever I entered, it will give this by default. So the second parameter in the get string is the default value. If you want to give the default value, you can show, otherwise you can give an empty. You can also give an empty. So there is no any problem if you give an empty. So the next one is I'll take shade preference second value. Sorry, I have given it a second. So I'll display this also. And empty. So now that's it what we have to do. I have written listener to save it and to read it. Now what I'll do is I'll just run the application. So now what I'm going to do is I'll just type the first name saying hello, hi as the second name. Now I click on save. So I clicked on save. Now it is saved. Maybe you can give a toast to check whether it is saved. Now what I'll do is I'll click on read. In the logcat is available in this Android Studio. You can see a bottom. You have run to do Android monitor. So if you click on Android monitor, this will be opened. And here you can see my log has been displayed. First name is hello and second name is hi. So this is what we gave it in the log. You can see in the log, first name, second name on the value. That is what it is displayed. Log.v is nothing but log level. We have different log levels, which is verbose, debug, info, warning, error, asset. Since I have given log v, it is means verbose, and you can see it is displayed here. It is v. and you can see the application name. Everything will be displayed to you, and this is the log how to use it. This can be used in purpose like when if you want to see where actually the control has come, at that time it is very useful. So this is how you can use a shade preferences. This shade preference, what happens is it can be used in scenarios like you have to maintain some sessions. At that time, it is very useful. When you open and close your application, if the shade preference is already having value, it will get autofilled. See, now what I'll do is I'll show you one thing how you can use the shade preference more flexibly. Now I have this. What I'll do is I'll just close my application. You can notice the value is removed, but some scenarios you want some application values to be like there even if the application is closed. At that time, shade preferences will come into play. Like instead of reading the values here, like clicking a button and you are doing it, you can have it here. So now what I'm going to do is I'll run this application. Now you can see the difference what happens. Even if I close the value will not be removed, or what you have to do is you have to set the value. That is, you have to first name dot set text. Then you have to give the shade preferences dot get string of first comma this much. So if you do this much, automatically whenever if the shade preference file is already available and if the shade preference file is already having this key value, then it will be auto-filled. That is, it will be automatically having the value. No need again the user has to enter. Or this can be used like when you want user data, whenever user is opening the application, you can store the user's data in the shade preference. Whenever he opens the application, you can use this user data and you can show it in your application everywhere. So that is the purpose of the shade preference. This is very useful in session maintenance. So now what I'll do is I'll show you again. I'll just type AAA and BBB. Now I'll click on save. You can see this. Now I clicked on save. It showed me this. Now what I'll do is I'll click on read. If you see here, AAA and BBB will be available. Okay, now what I'll do is I'll just close my application. I'll open my application now. The values are shown empty. Very sorry. Actually, I have put the code inside save button click listener. It should not be inside the save button. It should be available once you create the shade preference. So that is why it is giving problem. Sorry. Now if I run the application, you can see automatically it will show the value to me. Now it is not showing. But since the shade preference is already created and it is having a key value pair, when the application is successfully run, you will be like able to see the value already been filled. So like this, you can use all kinds of values. Pre-filled. Suppose if you have some application form where the user has to type a long procedure of application form, before he submits it, he closes the application. At that time, you can store it in a shade preference file. So whenever he is again coming back, you can pre-fill all the values, whatever he has entered, so that he doesn't want to enter it from the start. So such kind of scenarios, it is very important. So you can see here, automatically it will show the value. So it doesn't show empty. Whatever is there in the file, it will be read and it will be shown to you. So this kind of scenarios you can use the shade preference files. So that is about shade preferences.